Good morning. Today is Monday, February 12th, 2024. Rabbeinu Bachaya is one of the classic medieval commentators to the Torah, and he points something out that is very important about Hebrew, especially biblical Hebrew, and that is that there are words that are almost synonyms. Basically, they're synonyms, but they have slightly different implications. For example, there's a word shnayim. Shnayim means two. And there's a word shnei. Shnei means two. Two words, they both mean the same thing, shnayim or shnei. They mean two. The difference between them is that the word shnayim means two things that are similar but not identical. Shnei means two things that are identical. Now, the Netziv, the great 19th century scholar, Rabbi Naphtali Tzvi Hirsch, Berlin, gives an example of this later in the Torah. The Torah says, in Jewish criminal law, al pi shnayim edim, on the testimony of two eyewitnesses, a person who is guilty of a capital crime could be punished for this capital crime, God forbid, murder. Al pi shnayim edim, on the testimony of two eyewitnesses. Doesn't say al pi shnei edim, two witnesses, shnayim edim. Why? Because shnayim edim means that the testimony is similar between the two of them, but not exactly the same. Shnei edim would mean that two witnesses came, and remember, in court, one witness does not hear the testimony of the other. They're kept outside the room. Shnei edim would mean the two witnesses are giving identical testimony. Both of them say exactly the same words in describing what they saw. If the two witnesses are identical, that's an indication to the judges that they must have practiced this. They must have planned this. And maybe they are not telling the truth. And so we are very suspicious if the two witnesses literally word for word say the same words of their testimony. What we're looking for is shnayim edim, two witnesses that are both telling basically the same story of what happened, who was guilty, who was innocent, where did it happen, when did it happen. But they're using slightly different words in describing it, which is normal. That's what we would expect. That's the difference between shnei and shnayim. In our Torah portion, the Parsha of Truma, we learn about the Aron, the ark. We're going to discuss that later. And then the Torah says, V'asisa kaporas zahav ta'ar. You should make a cover on the ark. The ark was like a box. The two luchos, the two stones on which were engraved the Aseret HaDibros, the Ten Commandments, were placed inside the Aron. So it was like a box. And there was a cover. And the cover was called the kaporas. It was also made of gold. And it was the same length and width as the box itself, as the Aron itself. V'asisa shnayim keruvim zahav, and you should make two cherubs. Cherub is like the image of an angel, but with the face of a human. You should make two of them. V'asei kruv echad mikatzev mizeh, kruv echad mikatzev mizeh. So there's one angel on this side and one angel on this side. Notice, it says, V'asisa shnayim keruvim, two cherubs, two angels, not shnei keruvim. Notice. And the Torah says, V'hayu hakruvim parsei kanafayim lamal. They had wings, and the wings of each one was spread upward, Sochachim b'kanfein al kaparas, so that they're outstretched up. How do I say this? Their wings, which were stretched up and towards each other, formed like a chuppah, a space between them. Upneim ishalachiv, and the two were facing each other. So why does the Torah say shnayim keruvim and not shnei keruvim? Because our sages explain that the face of the one of these cherubs was the face of a young woman, and the face of the other was the face of a young man. So they're similar, but they're not identical. You couldn't say shnei keruvim because they're not identical. They have different faces. One is male, one is female. But they're shnayim, they're somewhat similar. But just think about this visual image of the space that they create between the two of them with their wings outstretched. Try to visualize this image. A lot of people do this with their hands today. And they mean to indicate by that to say, I love you. Now, maybe not intentionally, but that symbol, that gesture, is really a visual image of what it looked like with the two cherubs, male and female, facing each other, creating this chuppah, creating this space between them where they're facing each other. And this space between the two keruvim, this space is very, very significant. Because the Torah goes on to say, V'no aditi l'cha sham. God says, I will make myself known to you there. V'dibarti itcha me'al hakaparas mibein shnei hakruvim. I will speak to you from on top of the cover between the two cherubs. As kol asher atzavel Israel b'nei Israel. Everything that I am going to say to the Jewish people, everything that I'm going to communicate to the Jewish people, God says, is going to come from this space. The space that's created by the outstretched wings of these two angels. God's voice is heard. God's presence is felt from this romantic image. And this is perhaps the source of the statement in the Talmud that when a married couple, man and wife, man and woman, lives with shalom bayis, lives with true harmony within the home, where each respects the other, treats the other the way they want to be treated, when that happens, God's presence, the Shekhinah, God's presence dwells between them. Now here's a critical point. Shalom bayis, this goal that we all seek in our marriages, of true harmony within our home, and respect and love. Shalom bayis does not mean that a married couple merges into one unit, into one identity. That's not the goal. The Torah at the beginning of Bereshit says, famous verse, Al ken yazov ish es aviv ves imo, v'davak b'ishto, v'hayu lebasar echad. A man will leave his mother and his father and cleave to his wife, v'hayu lebasar echad, and they will become one flesh. What does it mean to become one flesh? Rashi famously is very careful to comment. It does not mean they become one entity. The husband and wife become one singular entity, one singular identity. It means that the two of them can create a new being, a baby, that will be basar echad, one entity that comes from the cleaving, the dveikus, the cleaving of the two of them. Not that they each submerge their individuality or their uniqueness into one entity, but rather together they can create a new entity, this baby. Shalom Bayis does not and never should require two unique personalities to merge into one, to lose their distinct identity. That's not the goal. And we see an indication of this in this passage itself, because while I mentioned to you the verse which says Shnayim Keruvim, later the verse that I read to you, V'dibarti idcha mibein shnei hakruvim, and I will speak to you, God says, from between the two Keruvim, shnei Keruvim, identical. Why does it use the term shnei, identical, if in fact before it used the term shnayim, similar but not identical? And we understood one is male, one is female. It's a representation of a romantic relationship. So why does the Torah say shnei Keruvim at the end? Rabbi Avram Gurwitz explained that in order to achieve Shalom Bayis, a husband and wife need to be both Shnayim and Shnei. They need to have differences between them, distinct personalities. Each one has distinct strengths and responsibilities, but they have to work together as one unit for a common good. There needs to be a sense of mission in life towards which they are both oriented. I've shared with some of you before the amazing insight of Rabbi Norman Lamm, who points out the distinction between the two lights that we light surrounding Shabbos. On Friday night, we light Shabbos candles to usher in the beginning of Shabbos. On Saturday night, we light the Havdalah candle to conclude the Shabbos and begin the work week. The difference between them, he points out, is on Friday night, each of the lights, different people light number of lights, 1, 2, whatever number of lights you light, but each light is distinct. Each one stands separately. Shalom Bayis requires that each person has their own boundaries, their own identity, their own sense of self, different from every other member of the family. By the time we get to the end of Shabbos, there's Havdalah. The Havdalah candle is several wicks woven together into one. Shalom Bayis is the balance of these two. That's when God's Shekhinah, God's presence, exists within that family. I've quoted to some of you before the insight of Rav Yosef Grunblatt. The key to togetherness is beyondness. The key to togetherness is not that we both agree on everything. Some want the bedroom warmer, some want it cooler. You don't have to agree about everything. And not only small things, about important things. You don't have to agree about everything. The key to togetherness is beyondness. Can you both see what is beyond yourselves? Do you have a sense of mission, of what you want your family to achieve? Yes, a couple has to respect each other's boundaries and each other's differences, but both must have the same drive, the same direction, with similar goals and dreams, a similar sense of mission of what they want their family to be, or what they want their family to achieve. If we can blend both of those within our marriage relationships, a sense of shnayim, where we give room to the other and we respect the other and we do not expect the other to change for me, but also shnei, that we shared together, looking forward, looking outward, looking upward at what we both want to accomplish together, that's the recipe for true shalom bayis. That is what creates this image from which we hear God, from which we feel God. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.